Uh, Today is Veterans Day in the United States, and people are honoring our veterans by putting flags on graves or along the sidewalks and along highways. We're putting wreaths on tombs or or having some sort of a visit to a veterans home, uh, honoring the veterans for what they did, the sacrifice that they made for our country. There's actually a better way to honor the veterans. That works, except it's kind of a bittersweet idea, wouldn't you say? A better way to honor veterans is by stopping wars, helping to stop wars. And there's a way to do that. Uh, the our plan for world peace involves the creation of an international government based on the U.S. Constitution. So what it does is it creates an additional layer of over what already exists, but it doesn't attempt to change what exists within a country. It just makes this additional layer of government over what already exists, and then it treats. In America, we understand this probably better than in the other countries. It treats all the countries the way the states are treated in the United States. So there's states' rights, and then there's individual rights, and then there's the federal layer of government, based on the Constitution. So imagine that in the United States, that if there's a dispute between the states, that it goes to court, it goes to a federal court, and it's settled peacefully rather than through an act of war. We haven't had any civil wars since the 1860s, so we don't have to send our troops into battle anymore. When world peace comes, the the there won't be any need to wage war. The wars are, technically speaking, at this point in time, over. They are obsolete. The soldiers uh, will 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 transition. The military will transition into a more like an Army Corps of Engineers, and instead of costing the taxpayers billions of dollars every year to maintain a standing army, if they are functioning like an Army Corps of Engineers, where they go and they work on large construction projects, we're still maintaining a military, but that will will allow the soldiers to transition out into the private sector when they're finished with their terms, and then they will also be making money for the United States. They can make money by working on big construction projects. There are places like in all over the world where our military can contract out and to be part of a that group of people, will maintain the peace, but at the same time, it won't cost us any money. So if we take the national defense money that's been put aside, hundreds of billions of dollars every year, and we don't need to wage war anymore, and our military is actually an asset that we have, for our economy. Imagine what would happen with the money. All the money that's wasted on war right now will go to the people instead. If you stop and consider that, what would happen to our infrastructure in the United States if we didn't have to wage war? So what we have right now is a the opportunity for everybody to function on a higher level. There's no more need for our military, our troops, our sons and daughters and husbands and wives, to be separated from their families for long times. They don't have to be put their lives into harm's way anymore. They don't have to wage war for causes that are not necessarily uh, in the national interest in terms of Right now, why would we have to wage war to gain control of natural resources or strategic locations if everybody's working together? An example of this, let's just say that there is a war on a virus right now. There's a pandemic going on. So imagine what would happen if everybody was working together with shared resources, shared research, and there was nothing that was redundant anymore. That the international government would handle the international issues, and that would take politics out of the equation. If there was a war on a virus, and I'll go into that in another video, the where viruses come from and how to stop viruses. Imagine with shared research, all the issues that we have are no longer a problem because politics is out of the equation. At that point in time, if there's any issue that is goes beyond the borders of any country, that'll be under the auspices of the international government, made up of people from all over the world, representatives from all the different countries. We will have 11 departments of the international government, including the International Department of Defense. I'll go into the departments in another video. But this is where we are right now. So I ask all of you to open a debate today. All the viewers, open a debate with within your family and friends. If you have a member of the military in your family or among your friends, why don't you ask him or her what would happen if disputes, instead of being waged on the battlefield, which is a very medieval kind of time. This is Middle Age thinking, might is right. Doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. When we have like an internet that has instant communications around the world, and we get a glimpse of what life is like in other countries because average people are making videos and showing what their homes are like and what their families are like and what issues people are advocating for, and we're just getting a global glimpse of what life is like all over the world. So if it can be solved on an international basis through this international government made up of people all over the world, coming together, like the Department of Defense, the International Department of Defense will handle all of these issues related to where to send people, the soldiers, and for these big government contracts. And imagine that instead of waging war between like Russia and the United States, or China and the United States and rattling sabers, or with Iran or any other country that is a hot spot in the world. Imagine that if the international government exists, what would happen? So share this information with your family and friends and open up the debate. What is the best way to honor the troops? The best way to honor the troops is to keep them home with their family and friends, working at jobs that they really like. And if they need to join the military because they would like to be part of this international uh, coalition of armies, then then ask them if they can come up with a better idea. Now, I'm going to share something with you that's going to be kind of fun about this whole idea. Right now, there is no international court that can handle the situation. So, our first government proposal for the creation of the international government is an exit strategy for Iraq. And it sets into place a protocol for ending the conflict that devolved in between the United States and Iraq. we'll go into that in greater detail later. But what it does then is it sets up a protocol for ending the conflict and a right of conflict resolution in at Oxford and Stonehenge. For the conflict resolution, there has to be a sense of unification and then conflict resolution. So we're looking at an overview idea, and then we're looking at the separate ideas of, of unification and conflict resolution. The country that we're going to highlight is England, not the United Kingdom, England. And their history has a very interesting path. They have a very interesting history. And that is that 5,000 years ago, the Stonehenge was a huge venue for conflict resolution. And people, kings from around the world, the known world, would go there. They would meet on the Salisbury Plain, and they would have an ancient rite of conflict resolution. Then, and we're working with the British government now and the ambassadors and such to do that, to reenact such a rite, to end the conflict in Iraq. That is going to be as if it was 5,000 years ago and people would go there and have this right. Well, imagine that if you look at the geography of that area, it's pretty interesting because they have two rivers, both called Avon. And one comes from the south and the other one comes from the northwest. And they would have, in those days, they would have one king come from the south and one king come from the north up the river, each on the river Avon. And they would meet. The Salisbury Plain is like a continental divide, an island divide, so to speak. And so the rivers run different directions from that plain. It's so unique that when they met there, they would start out, they would come, they would be hosted along the way, and then they would be taught the rules. Then they would meet at Durrington Walls, and they would be feasted. So all the archaeology of the area is a demonstration of that. It reinforces this information. It's not a place where the Druids come together and have this feast and dancing all night long to celebrate the rising sun or whatever. It was a site for conflict resolution. Then what they would do is they would have their feast, and then on the morning of the days that are the holy days, so to speak, where the energy is the greatest, and they would walk along the trail, the road that goes to Stonehenge, and then they would have this rite of conflict resolution. And we are going to go into that in far greater depth in future uh, videos. After the rite was over, the question is who would have actually won the dispute if it had really followed through? Who would have actually won? And this is something that if you were a king or a queen during that time period or whatever they were called in their own country, in their own culture, if who would have actually won? So they would go to the cursus, which is like a big, almost like a runway. It was a long area where they would have competitions like archery competitions, and I don't know if they had jousting or whatever, but that was where they would decide whether who won, who would have won. That would make them stop and think. Those kings stop and think. The and we'll, like I said, we'll go into this whole idea later when we work this out. But at that point in time, that would have to be resolved. So what we are going to do now, not so much between in Oxford and Stonehenge, but in a future project, we are going to have a military Olympics. We're going to set up a military Olympics to decide who would actually win. So if the soldiers, if the U.S. military is supposedly the strongest military in the world, and people are world leaders are investing huge amounts of money in secret weapon systems and things like that, who actually would win if there was an all-out war, an all-out nuclear war, an all-out global conflict? Who would win? So we will find out with this military Olympics, and we're going to start to innovate, let the military innovate to decide who's going to win that and how that would work. This is something that we have scheduled in the future. So if those top military, the SEALs are going to, the elite troops are going to be coming together to fight, who would actually win one of those, a global war? If there is an act of aggression, how do we stop that? So there's a transition period that's coming, but we're going to be we're going to be transitioning out of wars and into this idea of the the Army Corps of Engineers and the disputes being settled like in Oxford and Stonehenge, and with conflict resolution and unification. And then there's going to be mediation, and then a court case, and then we're going to go on and we're going to let these countries that are involved uh, demonstrate the value of settling disputes in court rather than the battlefield. So today I'd like you to bring this idea up with your family and friends, open it up for debate, and let's see what happens if that's a way to honor the troops. I would bet you just about anything that there would not be one soldier, one sailor, one airman who's going to be against this idea. I think that they would be more than happy to see this come about. So now, and this is not just a celebration today, Veterans Day, to honor the troops, but something that we can bring in the whole world and have them appreciate this idea too. And we're working with the veterans and other ways too to help them overcome this idea. I'll talk about that in another video. So thank you for listening, and share and open this up to debate. Be sure to subscribe and keep informed. And we'll talk about that too, how to keep informed. Um, Visit our website and join the debate. If you can come up with a better plan, we'll do that. Say, we'll all be behind you if you can come up with a better idea. So, talk to you in future videos. Thanks for listening.